Jonathan, let me get the computer going here. 1 second. And joining us now on our Book Talk segment is a man who's written a book, kind of the history of organic foods and how we kind of eat the way we do today. It's a very interesting book. It's called Hippie Food, how back to the landers, long hairs, and revolutionaries changed the way we eat. We're joined today by Jonathan Kauffman. He's based out, I believe, in the San Francisco area, and he joined us by telephone today. Jonathan, good to talk with you. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to have a chance to talk with you for a couple of minutes. I read through the book, and I think where you live in San Francisco is not a lot different from here in Sarasota, Florida. We got a lot of the organic food stores, Whole Foods, Fresh Market, and a lot of the farmers markets that go out on the weekends down here. So it's a big movement here. I guess it's been going on for a while, but this is kind of the history of it. Kind of interesting topic.
Yeah. No, it was a lot of fun researching it.
What kind of brought you to doing it? I know you have a background in cooking and all that, but what brought you to write about this particular era? I guess it kind of started in the 50s and 60s, right?
Yeah, well, so I grew up in a small town in Indiana, and my parents were far from hippies. They were liberal Mennonites, but in the 1970s, they started cooking all of these foods, and we joined a food co-op in our small town. And so I grew up with broccoli and tofu stir-fries and lentil stews and, wheat germ and yogurt and granola. And those were all foods that I kind of poo-pooed as a kid and as an adult. But it really wasn't until a few years ago when I was a restaurant critic in Seattle, and I visited a vegetarian restaurant that had been around for 30 years and had this huge surge of nostalgia when I started eating my nut loaf and soy burger and tahini sauce over steamed vegetables, and I realized that this was the food I grew up with, but I didn't know why my parents had embraced it and how it made its way from a place like San Francisco to Elkhart, Indiana in 1978.
Yeah, always, for a long time, kind of been, like you said, almost a joke, this type of food. Like you said, it's for, people that are kind of living in communes and, not really living the normal lives the rest of us do. But you look at the stores now, every store, not just the, Whole Foods and the Fresh Markets, that type, but, you go to Publix, you go to the big chains down here in Florida, they got all organic food sections now, so it's the norm.
Yeah, and it's kind of amazing how these fringe foods like yogurt and granola have become foods that a lot of kids growing up eating today, and a lot of it has to do with that movement and their ideals that the counterculture kids were really trying to. They were disillusioned with American society and politics and the economy, and one of the ways that they decided they were going to make a new world for themselves was to create a new diet that they would be healthier. But they were so successful at adopting all of these foods and then spreading them across the country that the rest of America eventually paid notice and noticed that they were actually healthier for us.
Where you are in San Francisco now, I mean, that kind of, I guess, is most people think anyway, that's kind of where the hippie movement started, particularly this, the lifestyle, the communes, and this kind of thing. But it wasn't just there, right? It was, all over the country, but I guess that kind of gets to be the point people think of the main place, right? San Francisco area.
Yeah, I think, in terms of fashion and the music, a lot was happening in San Francisco, but I traveled to rural Tennessee and Vermont and Austin, Texas, and Minneapolis and Ann Arbor, Michigan, and this food was all happening, it was all arriving around the country at the same time. The counterculture kids were traveling so much and talking so much that they spread their ideas very quickly.
Back to the landers. I've never heard that term before, but it's interesting. I mean, people thought of, getting away from, eating a lot of meat or any meat at all and just really living off the land. But that's a movement that really kind of started the organic farming movement, right?
Yeah, as these counterculture kids fled the cities because they were afraid that society was crumbling, and so they moved to rural areas and they built log cabins and lived in communes. And once they got there, they realized they had to make money somehow, and they also had to figure out how to eat. And so they many of them began farming. And when they began farming, they had these ideas about, natural and avoiding chemicals. And so they really embraced the organic movement, and then built, the whole infrastructure, including farmers markets and food co-ops and natural food stores to sell this organic produce too.
Yeah, food co-ops. I've heard that term over the years, and it's kind of a situation where everybody kind of contributes, but like you said, people still have to make money to pay other bills, so that was the way they came up with to do that, right?
Right. They would band together, and a bunch of volunteers. You'd have to volunteer for a few hours in order to, buy food there. And they were allowed to. They got food pretty cheap because everybody was volunteering their time and rent was low. But that movement really, went into decline in the 1980s as people grew up. They had less time to volunteer, or they were less interested, and the grocery business is a pretty low margin business. But by that time, grocery stores and for-profit markets had realized that there was money to be made in all of these strange foods that the hippies had adopted, and so all of these foods moved out of the co-ops and into the rest of the stores.
Was there one person, man or woman, that kind of spearheaded this, that you can kind of point a finger at, say, this was the guy, or this was the group, or maybe the family that got this going?
No, it was really a grassroots movement.
Yeah.
I mean, if I think of one person who's the most influential, it would be Frances Moore Lappé, who in 1971, she wrote Diet for a Small Planet, and she looked at agriculture reports and kind of discovered that she discovered that we were producing so much extra crops, so much extra grain and soybeans, and we were feeding it all to animals for meat. And she said, if we feed this food to humans instead, we could solve global hunger. And it sort of helped politicize all of these food choices that people were making for their health, and gave people the sense that this is a political movement as well as a sort of drive to eat more healthfully.
How do you see it today? As I mentioned before, Whole Foods was bought by Amazon last year, so it's a whole different deal now with that. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but what's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, I know. There is money to be made here. Organics is now a $43 billion a year business or industry, but at the same time, I mean, it's bringing food that I think is still healthier. And making it more available to people. It's in 1968, if you wanted to buy brown rice, you had to knock on somebody's door. It was kind of like doing a drug deal, somebody told me. And now you just walk to your corner store and pick up whole grains.
Yeah, I walk through the Publix is the big store down here, and you walk through, and there's literally aisles of organic foods, and even with regular foods, there's organic versions of them. So there's so many choices now. There's really no excuse. If you want to eat that way, you can do it. It costs a little bit more, but you can do it, right?
Yeah, they didn't. They didn't necessarily overthrow the food system, but they created a viable alternative that's now available to anybody who chooses.
Yeah. Well, the name of the book is called Hippie Food. Again, how back to the landers, long hairs, and revolutionaries changed the way we eat, and really chronicled very well done by Jonathan Kauffman. And Jonathan, you have a website you want to direct people to get more information about the book?
I do. It's www.Jonathan, Jonathan, Kauffman, Kauffman.com.
Great. Jonathan, pleasure talking to you. Good luck with the book. Hopefully we can talk to you again, but thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me on.